In tonight's news edition, His Majesty the King and the U.S. Vice President hold talks on Syria and efforts to achieve Palestinian-Israeli peace. The debate goes on about eliminating Syria's chemical weapons, and NATO says the military option in Syria should be kept open. And Egyptian security forces and militants fight gun battles during a government operation to regain control of a town controlled by Islamists near Cairo. Good evening and welcome to the news. His Majesty the King held talks in Washington with U.S. Vice President Joe Biden on Middle East issues. During the meeting, attended by His Royal Highness Crown Prince Al Hussein, a focus of the discussion were the repercussions of the Syrian crisis and efforts to bring about peace between the Palestinians and Israelis based on the two-state solution. King Abdullah will in the next 2 days start a visit to New York to head Jordan's delegation to the United Nations General Assembly's annual session. His Majesty will address the 68th session of the General Assembly and meet UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, heads of state and delegations, top political leaders and international figures as part of ongoing consultation and coordination on regional issues. His Majesty began a U.S. tour at the end of a 4-day state visit to Beijing, where he discussed regional developments and closer economic ties with Chinese political and business leaders. Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour said the Higher Agricultural Council, which has not met for more than 3 years, should be rejuvenated to prop up the key sector. Chairing a meeting of the Council at the Prime Minister's office, Mansour pledged government support to ensure the success of the farming sector. The Council reviewed a host of issues, such as engaging private sector institutions in decisions related to export and import of agricultural produce and opening new markets in the light of the conflict in Syria. Mansour also hailed the response of the Iraqi government to keep the borders open for longer hours to facilitate exports of Jordanian vegetables and fruits. The Council also discussed ways to enhance productivity in the agricultural sector using a Gulf grant given to Jordan, in addition to the passage of legislation of concern to the agricultural sector. The Royal Committee for Enhancing National Integrity will wrap up a series of meetings with local community leaders across the country next week in its bid to forge consensus on a National Integrity Charter. The committee will cap its encounters in Amman next week after convening consultative gatherings in 11 of the kingdom's 12 governorates. In the southern Aqaba region today, the committee, headed by Minister of Public Sector Development Khalifa came together with grassroots leaders, MPs and community figures and elders. Khawalde told the local leaders that his panel was trying to gather citizens' thoughts before declaring the final integrity document that should address the people's aspirations. The citizens' demands in Aqaba revolved around law enforcement to enhance the state of law and institutions and the citizens' oversight role. The panel will also meet political parties, professional associations, parliamentarians and university presidents ahead of a national conference to publicize the National Integrity Charter and its executive plan. The government hopes the charter will shore up the political reform process. A debate is underway among world powers on enforcing a deal to destroy Syria's chemical weapons within a year. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he could not be 100% certain the plan would be carried out successfully. NATO said individual alliance nations may agree to help implement the deal on eliminating Syria's chemical weapons, but NATO itself is unlikely to play a role. Zain Abu Sufa has more.
Syria's membership of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons is not expected to take effect before October 14th. But the Syrian government has showed its intentions to fulfill the obligations in the Chemical Weapons Convention in advance. According to the U.S.-Russia framework for eliminating Syria's chemical weapons, Damascus should hand over its chemical weapons and reveal where they are produced and stored by the deadline of this coming Saturday. The 41-member Executive Council of the organization will hold a special meeting tomorrow to discuss the chemical weapons issue in Syria further.
The meeting on Friday will be a special meeting held by the Executive Council of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, focusing on Syria's chemical weapons issues, the elimination of chemical weapons in Syria, as well as the implementation of the agreements established in Geneva in the OPCW.
President Bashar al-Assad said it would cost about $1 billion to get rid of Syria's chemical weapons under the US-Russian deal reached last week, and it would take about a year. In an interview on the Fox News television channel, Assad denied that his forces were responsible for a chemical weapons attack in Ghouta outside Damascus on August 21st. He said the Syrian army was advancing in the area at the time and had no need to fire rockets filled with the nerve agent sarin, as the United States says it did. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he had strong grounds to believe that the chemical attack in Syria was staged by opponents of al-Assad.
We have all the grounds to suggest that this is provocation. You know, a clever, sneaky one, of course, but at the same time, judging by how it was executed, it was primitive. The old Soviet-made shell casings that had long ago been taken out of use from the Syrian army, made in the USSR, were still written there, were used.
Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu made it clear that his country has no current plans to destroy Syrian chemical weapons on its own territory. NATO Secretary General said he thinks it is essential for keeping momentum in the diplomatic and political process, but the military option is still on the table. He again blamed the Syrian regime for the deadly chemical attack.
The missiles were launched from areas controlled by the government. It doesn't make sense for the opposition to attack their own people with chemical weapons in areas they already control. And furthermore, we don't think the opposition has at its disposal means to carry out a chemical weapons attack of that scope and scale.
A draft UN Security Council resolution on Syria's chemical weapons under discussion in New York leaves the door open to the use of force if Syria does not comply. Russia is expected to oppose this provision. In Syria, the conflict continues to take lives, with fighting raging in Damascus, Homs, and in the north. In the central city of Homs, a roadside bomb killed at least 14 people. There was also infighting within rebel ranks. Turkey closed a border crossing to Syria after an al-Qaeda-linked group stormed a nearby town and expelled opposition fighters from a western-backed unit. Fighters from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant killed at least 5 members of the Northern Storm Brigade, a rebel unit that controls the border, highlighting the deep opposition divisions. Zin Abu Sufa for the News at 10.
Over to Egypt, where security forces and militants fought gun battles during a government operation to regain control of a town near Cairo dominated by Islamist supporters of ousted President Mohammed Morsi. A police general was killed by gunfire, and at least 9 policemen and soldiers were wounded by a hand grenade in the clashes in Kardassa, 14 kilometers from the capital. Khaled Dababni has an update.
Egyptian security forces clashed with gunmen on the outskirts of the capital, Cairo. Police moved into Kardassa, a town near Cairo, to reassert control over the Islamist-dominated area. Security forces stood guard outside Kardassa police station after a police general was killed in an exchange of fire in the town earlier in the day. Dozens of police and army vehicles entered the town at daybreak. It was the second operation this week to restore control over the area. Security forces in body armor and armed with automatic rifles fanned out in the town. 2 policemen were wounded by a hand grenade thrown from a rooftop. Security sources said dozens of weapons, including rocket-propelled grenades, had been seized, and 65 people were arrested during the raid.
We have 4 police officers who were injured when a grenade was thrown at them, and then 6 soldiers were also injured in the same way. And as I said before, none of those arrested were injured. Out of over 50 arrested, no one was injured by gunfire.
Army checkpoints secured the entrances to the town. Tires set ablaze to obstruct the operation smoldered in the roads. Last month, militants staged a bloody attack on Kardasa police station, killing 11 officers and leaving the building in a charred state. Police were hunting 140 suspects, although the main suspects in the Kardasa attack had been detained. Earlier, heavy gunfire was heard in Nahya, a neighborhood near Kardasa, after 2 warning shots were fired by security forces to disperse the crowd. In a similar operation earlier this week, the security forces moved into the town of Delga in the southern province of Minya, scene of some of the worst violence last month. Around 70 people were killed and about 20 churches torched in Minya. In Cairo today, Egyptian explosives experts defused 2 primitive bombs planted on a metro line, causing a partial closure of the network. The bombs had been found 100 meters from Hilmiyat al-Zaytun station in northeast Cairo. Later in the day, the metro line was reopened and commuters were seen coming in and out of the station. Hala Dababne for the news at 10.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said Tehran is not seeking war and wants the Middle East to have, I quote, rule by the will of the people. He spoke in an interview with NBC News aired today, just days before he travels to New York for an appearance at the United Nations. Asked about Israel, Rouhani said Iran does not seek any war with any country, but peace and friendship among the nations of the region. The new Iranian leader vowed that his government would never develop nuclear weapons, his strongest signal yet that he may be seeking a diplomatic thaw with the West. He also insisted he had complete authority to negotiate a nuclear deal with the United States and other Western powers. Rouhani also said that the tone of a letter he received from President Barack Obama, part of a recent exchange of messages between the 2 leaders, was positive and constructive. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said that nuclear weapons development would be inconsistent with Islamic values. The son of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam, and former intelligence chief Abdullah Sanusi appeared in court. They are facing charges mostly relating to crimes committed during the 2011 uprising. Saif al-Islam appeared in court in Zintan, despite attempts by the Prosecutor General to have him transferred to the Tripoli court. Sanusi is wanted by the International Criminal Court on charges of ordering brutal reprisals during the uprising that toppled the former regime. Saif al-Islam and Sanusi both face possible death sentences over charges related to crime committed during Gaddafi's 42-year rule, as well as during the 8-month civil war. NATO forces in Afghanistan launched an investigation into an attack by a drone aircraft on an Al-Qaeda member in the east of the country. The attack took place early this month and left 9 casualties, including 8 women and 1 child. NATO's International Security Assistance Force initially said 10 enemy forces had been killed, and it had no reports of any civilian casualties. Afghan President Hamid Karzai strongly condemned the attack. Meanwhile, Pakistan expressed concern after 5 Pakistani civilians were killed in cross-border firing by the Afghan border police. Pakistan has demanded an investigation. And to the world of style. In the second day of Milan Fashion Week, models showcased the new collection of Italian label Blue Girl. Eternal Summer was the theme for the label's spring-summer look, with designer Anna Molinari saying she drew inspiration from British actress Julie Christie in the film Darling. Flowers featured heavily in the collection, with embroidered floral motifs on dresses, bags, shoes and jewelry. Bright summer colors like yellow and aquamarine were paired with animal print and oversized accessories. Models strutted down the catwalk in mini dresses made from raw silk and lace, and according to Blue Girl, the mini dress is a must-have item for this season. Dozens of designers are showcasing their spring-summer 2014 collections at Milan Fashion Week, including luxury Italian brands Prada, Missoni, and Giorgio and Emporio Armani. A crushing victory for Barcelona at the Champions League start over Ajax Amsterdam in the Camp Nou. Lionel Messi netted a hat-trick for Barcelona in their Group H opener. The Argentine Player of the Year lit up the stadium with a brilliant curling free kick in the 22nd minute, a trademark dash in from the right and clinical finish 10 minutes into the second half, and a low shot into the corner from the edge of the area 15 minutes from time. Defender Gerard Piqué netted Barca's third with a header from Neymar's centre in the 69th minute. Ajax coach Frank de Boer said he was disappointed his team had given up too many chances.
Nos harán evidentemente mucho mejor. Ahora no se me ocurre pensar aún hablando del mejor.
Emirates team New Zealand edged to within one win of taking home the America's Cup, defeating Oracle Team USA in a close-fought race that again showcased the Kiwis' seamless teamwork and superior strategy at the start. But New Zealand will have to wait at least another day to clinch the cup after yesterday's second race was postponed seconds before the starting gun due to high winds. In the race that did take place, New Zealand turned in a textbook performance that left defender Oracle with nowhere to turn. Oracle, once the favourite to retain the title that it won 3 years ago, still needs 8 victories to hold on to the trophy. And finally, a quick look at the weather forecast. Chilly tonight in hilly areas and pleasant elsewhere, with a chance for scattered showers, especially in the country's north. Winds will be southwesterly moderate, picking up at times. Fair weather is in the forecast across many regions tomorrow, but it will remain relatively hot in the Jordan Valley, while winds will be northwesterly moderate to brisk. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a hot day tomorrow with northerly brisk winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King and the US Vice President hold talks on Syria and efforts to achieve Palestinian-Israeli peace. The debate goes on about eliminating Syria's chemical weapons, and NATO says the military option in Syria should be kept open. And Egyptian security forces and militants fight gun battles during a government operation to regain control of a town controlled by Islamists near Cairo. And that's the end of tonight's news. I'm Rad Lapouche. Thanks for being with us and have a good night.